Just today, there was a UN vote where the entire world, and I mean the entire world, when I say the entire world, I don't mean what the US means when they say the international community, like a handful of countries that agree with the US. Whenever the US says the international community is united against Putin, what they mean is the US, Western Europe, maybe Australia, Japan, and that's pretty much it. The rest of the world doesn't count as the international community. When I say the entire world, I mean every single country on this planet opposes the embargo that the United States has imposed on Cuba for 6 decades now, that has suffocated and strangled that island. It hasn't changed the government. It hasn't caused any suffering among the leaders of the government, the ostensible reason to do it, but it has completely immiserated the population. The embargo means that not only can American companies not engage in any trade with Cuba, and not only are American citizens barred from even visiting Cuba, let alone doing business with Cuba, if you even try to go to Cuba by coming from Mexico or South America, you are subject to felony charges from the United States government. But they also, part of the sanctions are that no company in the world is permitted to trade with Cuba. And if a country does trade with Cuba, the United States government will then sanction them, which will harm that company a great deal because of the supremacy of the US dollar. And it's just had the effect of preventing any money from entering Cuba, any goods from entering Cuba, from them selling their goods, with very rare exception. And the entire world is against it. Even Western Europe, even the allies in Asia. And there was a vote today at the UN calling for the end to the US embargo in Cuba. Every single country on the planet, every single country, even Ukraine, voted yes to end this embargo. This embargo is evil, it's immoral, it's destructive. There were only 3 countries that did not vote yes. One of them abstained, that was Moldova. The only 2 countries who voted no on this resolution were the United States and Israel. We constantly are the rogue countries in the world. We constantly tie ourselves to Israel and we stay together and we isolate ourselves from the rest of the world. Many of the UN resolutions on Israel, the United States either vetoed, even though the whole world was in favor, or stood alone only with Israel and a couple of other stray countries in order to defend Israel. So Matthew Miller, the White House, the State Department spokesman, was asked today about this as well. Like, why is the US and Israel alone in the world in insisting on the continuation of the suffocation of Cuba that never changes the government, doesn't affect the government at all, just makes the people in Cuba have miserable lives and face constant generation-long deprivation? And here's what he said.
So the vote happened today in the UN on the Cuba embargo. You know what the vote was?
Yeah, it was a predictable vote in line with past votes.
Yeah, exactly. But just for the record, let's say it was 187 to 2, 1 abstention.
I am aware.
The 1 abstention wasn't even a Pacific Island nation; it was Moldova.
Yeah, I'm aware of the long history of UN votes on this matter.
Yes. Okay. So, at what point, though, are you guys going to realize that the entire world, with the exception of you and Israel, thinks that the embargo is a really bad idea and should be stopped?
No, I think we are quite clear on the opinion of other countries around the world, and it's one with which we disagree. We take their opinion seriously, but we make our own policy determinations.
It's 32 years in a row, with the exception of 1 year when you guys abstained.
We take their views quite seriously, but we make our own determinations about these matters, and we disagree.
You take their views quite seriously? That's not borne out by the facts that you continue to persist with this.
We take them seriously, but we make our own decisions on the policy and others. So.
Okay, and are you comfortable then with it's just once again, it's just you and Israel standing up?
Certainly we would welcome other countries sharing our opinion in this, but we're not blind to the history of countries around the world having a very different view of this matter. Long predates this administration. But as I said, we make our own determinations. And with that.
No, it's very similar to Israel. There's absolutely no reason to suffocate the island of Cuba, except for the fact that there is a large Cuban population in the United States and other Latino citizens who have come from places in Latin America like Venezuela that are very anti-communist. Those are often the people who end up in the United States, and they just want to see punitive measures against Cuba to just expel their hatred against the Cuban government and communist leaders. The problem is it has no effect. It has no success. It has no purpose other than to cause the people in that country to suffer. And the only reason the United States is willing to isolate itself from the entire world and insist on a policy that has been going on for 6 decades and is afraid to end the embargo in Cuba is the same reason they're afraid to defy Israel, for purely domestic political reasons. They don't want to alienate the pro-Israel voters and pro-Israel donors, both Jews and evangelicals and whoever else has a great affinity to Israel, and they don't want to alienate Cuban and Latino voters, especially Cuban voters in Florida, Latino voters in key swing states, even if it means continuing to not only impose extreme suffering on the people of Cuba, who they're ostensibly trying to help, but also, again, appearing to the rest of the world to be this country that just goes around making huge numbers of people suffer with their superior military force and their superior financial power. And that is what is driving more and more countries away from the United States and into the arms of competing alliances, including the one led by China. And the US government just seems, from one president to the next, from one party to the next, to be attached to these policies, even though they so blatantly harm American interests. Thanks for watching this clip from System Update, our live show that airs every Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on Rumble. You can catch the full nightly shows live or view the backlog of episodes for free on our Rumble page. You can also find full episodes the morning after they air across all major podcasting platforms, including Spotify and Apple. All the information you need is linked below. We hope to see you there.